Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm going to be doing the It's All Relative tag that originated at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes, so I'll have that below. I was tagged by Sean the Bookmaniac, so I'll tap that below as well. And I'll try to fly through these, but I'm very excited about some of the prompts and might ramble, so just bear with me. If so, hopefully I at least sell you on the book if I do. First prompt is Mamma Mia. Recommend a book with a mother character that is pivotal to the story. I chose He, She, and It by Marge Piercy. The character in this is a mother and a wife, and the impetus for the story is that she is not enjoying her home life, is not in love with her partner anymore, and she's getting a separation, and she has to go to a court which is governed by the corporateocracy in which she lives. It's a semi-far-flung future in which everything is a corporateocracy, and your standing in the company is an evaluation of sort of like how much they need you. You're prescribed a very specific number or whatever for it. And so when she goes to find out who is assigned guardianship of her son, it ends up being the father, because he has just landed a promotion in which he is able to usurp her small little standing in the company, basically. So her son is taken away from her, her identity is taken away from her, and she goes to a Jewish commune in which she was born and raised to sort of like rediscover her identity as it was subsumed by her partner previously. It is a fantastic, fantastic book. Can't recommend it enough. Next is Papa Don't Preach, a book with a father character you like or despise. The first that came to mind was David Joy's Where All Light Tends to Go. David Joy is doing incredible stuff with Southern Gothic lit right now. He's sort of following in Faulkner's steps, but the prose are just artful. It's like Daniel Woodrow's Winter's Bone, similar to that. It's flowery, but not too flowery. It's very interesting in a craft perspective, and it flows like something between poetry and prose. Very much looking at class inequality, struggles in the South, and how sins of the father and legacy of a family, and just sort of like how what you were born into is often what you end up doing there. What people do when poverty is exercised on them. It's a really compelling story about a kid who is graduating high school soon, is in love with a girl. His father, being a dealer, affords him some status, yet his whole life seems to have been a grooming for this purpose that he doesn't want. And it all takes place when he's close to graduation and needs to essentially make 2 or 3 very specific decisions about his future, and it goes down in Southern Gothic type territory where there's violence. Brothers and Sisters, a book with an interesting sibling relationship. I'm very excited to talk about this book. This is Frail Sister by Karen Green. I don't know exactly where the camera is here, but I'll put up pictures of them anyway. This book is super fascinating. Basically, this is kind of autofiction in which Karen Green did have a niece, as far as I can tell, who disappeared. But within this fictional story, it is about an aunt who tries to figure out what happened to the niece that disappeared back in the Dust Bowl era by reconstructing found objects in which the sisters would mail each other and sort of like check in with each other to see what's going on in a diary type way. So everything in the book is found object stuff, and some of it is printed on, as you can see here possibly, to create the actual narrative of what is happening. And so there's no meta contextualization from the aunt. It's just a chronological order of these things, and you need to figure out exactly what happened to the aunt as well as things progress. It's a critique of the military-industrial complex. It goes into wartime stuff, which usually I'm not that interested in, but here is fascinating. Again, class inequalities, and the characterization between the sisters are just really witty, and Karen Green makes a lot of use of the small space that she has when she selects the found objects. It's just a really great book. Incidentally, Karen Green is the widow of David Foster Wallace, which is how I found her two books. Her other book, Bow Down, which is about the loss of her husband, is also exceptional, and I would recommend that as well, even though it's not a prompt. The next prompt is It's Been 84 Years, a multi-generational story or a chronicle of a character's whole life. This was very easy for me. It was either going to be Cloud Atlas or Greenwood by Michael Christi. This is a Canadian book that is exceptional. It follows the life of a scientist in 2038 who works at the last haven of a forest after climate change has occurred and a disease has spread across all of the world, I believe, and basically wiped out foliage trees, changed agriculture, and killed many people. This story works back from that point, tracing her lineage in a similar Cloud Atlas way, where it goes back 3 or 4 times to different characters in her life and then retraces its way back into the future. You get a very whole narrative of her life, her other people in her family whom she doesn't know, but is very pivotal to the overall story in a way that you don't know until you consume the content. It's very good. Prose-wise, exceptional. I gave this book 5 stars, thought it was amazing. You Complete Me, a book with an interesting marriage as a central element to the story. This is a bit outside the box, but I'm going with Small Game Hunting at the Local Coward Gun Club by Megan Gail Coles. It specifically is a case study, in my mind, about examining the misogyny and institutional racism that occurs in Canada that is usually decried by the people here, saying that it doesn't exist, we're not like America, yada, yada, yada. And how it does this is on a specific day, these people that work at a diner encounter like a personal powder keg situation in which their dynamics and the things that are happening in there explode. At the same time, a storm is colliding with their small town. Each character is a lens of which to look at misogyny, whether it's internalized by the female characters or whether it's perpetrated most profoundly by the male characters. There's content warnings for sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, racism. This book is intense. So this book starts with, I wrote this for myself and the beautiful vicious island that makes and unmakes us. It takes place in Newfoundland, and it's often characterized as Newfoundland Gothic, if that tells you anything. And then the next page is, this might hurt a little bit, be brave. And she means it. She examines marriage, friendship between multiple different types of things, familial to good friends to parents to a very specific marriage in it. I think it would be a spoiler to go into too much, but a predominant marriage is examined in this for the ways in which men are cowards. The next prompt is Picture It, Sicily, which Sean, by the way, I think is a Golden Girls reference. A book with an interesting elder character. Drive your plow over the bones of the dead. Jeez. This book is by a person's name I can't pronounce, Olga Tokarczuk, I think. Translated by Antonia Lloyd-Jones. This is a really fascinating book, at least I thought, about a woman who lives in a very small town in which there are killings happening. She's isolated. She is a little bit quirky, a little bit different. She has a very interesting wry sense of humor. She's translating William Blake's full works by herself, and she is very much in touch with like nature and the world around her, and a certain kind of spiritualism that I think is unique to her. And so when these killings are happening, she kind of puts on her detective hat and wants to find out what is happening. Of course, her views are much opposed to the police, who think it's just like a killer, possibly, or a transient, something like that. And Olga's on duty. She's here to figure out what's going on. It's a very interesting book that I think will subvert expectations. Friends with Benefits, a book with a found family or friends as family element. This is going to be a bit strange possibly, but I really love this series and I wanted to talk about it, and I think it definitely fits the prompt. This is The Unquiet Dead by Ausma Zehanat Khan. This is a Canadian book as well, and it follows a fictional policing effort. So it is a detective book, sort of like a police procedural, but there's caveats. So especially in this time, I'm not very interested in reading police books, but this is exceptional because it's about a Muslim man named Khattak, who is heading up a special unit of investigation meant solely for bringing to justice marginalized identities, basically. He will investigate crimes in which they are the perpetrators to make sure that everything is above board, or he will also investigate victims. Basically, his perspective is to get a much more comprehensive, non-systemic view of the situation and to deal with it appropriately. His partner in this, Rachel, is also pretty subversive of tropes. She's characterized very well, in my opinion. Her identity straddles this sort of like in-group, out-group thing in the same way that Issa's does. The first book has a victim in which they are tied to the Srebrenica massacre of 1995, and each book goes to a different incident like that and acts as a foil to elucidate the reader's comprehension of what actually happened. There's examinations of genocides that have taken place that have kind of like not made the news in Canada, or it has but not been very comprehensive. She's got all her receipts at the back of every book. It's very fascinating. The characters are excellent. The dynamic is really good. And I like that it doesn't devolve into like a romance, basically, where they just like hook up. It's more of a firm cementing of a equal partnership, and there's give and take with their relationship and problems that come with it, but it's never a romantic one. And it's also nice to see a male Muslim portrayed as desirable and interesting and intelligent and smart, and it's just very subversive of the genre, and I like that a lot. Next, I have I Think We're Alone Now, a book with a character who was lost, left behind, or abandoned. Can also be a story with an orphaned or adopted character. I'm going to choose another not well-known cyberpunk book. I'm a cyberpunk writer and aficionado of cyberpunk, so my knowledge base is often pulling from those books. This is The Fortunate Fall by Raphael Carter, and this is got an interesting publication history even. Back when it was published in the 90s, Raphael Carter refused to give pronouns for interviews and things like that. So there's a lot of interpretations that they were non-binary, and you can see that kind of queer representation in the book very much so. To go into it would be spoilers, but this is a fascinating book in of itself because it's about examining parasocial relationships. And I thought it'd be pertinent for YouTube because in this book, the person is themselves a camera or a receptor and a recording device. They have wetware in their brain, and when they do a news story, what ends up happening is they record the feelings that they're feeling, the visual stuff that's going on, and they can intersperse memories and stuff in it as well. So they make like a segment basically, and they upload it to a producer, and the producer remixes it into like a packageable packet that they send out digitally to people, and people consume it, or they can watch it live and stuff like that as well. So she is a reporter, basically, like a futuristic reporter, and she gets the line on a story that there's ostensibly somebody who has in a tank keeping captive or keeping safe from humanity, who knows, the last whale in existence in this climate effect future, basically. And so she gets on the scent, and then of course there's an opposing force, and we don't know why they are so interested in the same story, but they aggressively pursue her, and it's sort of like a mystery that spirals, and it goes into her past interspersed, because she has some sort of damage and trauma that is being examined, and it's done through a very effective queer lens. The writing is exceptional, it's very inclusive, it's just an excellent book, and again, very subversive of the genre and something that you don't often see recommended. The last book, Fur Baby, a book where a pet or animal is part of the family and or plays an important role in the book. I don't have this book yet, but it is by the same author, Charlotte McConaghy. This is her debut, Migrations, which I liked a lot. It's a climate fiction, weird type of book. This Once We Were Wolves book, her new one, is so exceptional though. It's way better than this, and it is so thematically cogent and interesting that it's just even hard to analyze and talk about. But essentially what this book is about is on Scotland, there's an outbreak of deer and some other ecological factors that are happening that really offset the balance that's happening there. And this organization thinks that the way to correct this is to introduce wolves into the population. They will hunt down the deer, and they will do some other things that enable it to get back in balance, and then maybe they'll take them out or whatever. In tandem with this is we get the story from two twins who go along with this organization. The wolves in particular mean a lot to them, and this whole story is sort of a parallel to them trying to repair a tragedy and a trauma that they have incurred in the past. So just as the wolves are being introduced into the wild, so are they after this event. And so the story has this very like unhinged, wild feral quality to it. Unexpected, it's very dark. Again, there's content warnings for all types of abuse in this one. But I've just found that the parallel story to them trying to integrate into a foreign environment, which is like the Scots, the town that they are around, and who they're interacting with, even the other members of the organization, as well as what happens with the wolves in the actual wilderness, and what happens with that it's just so satisfying a novel, because when both are tied up, it makes sense, it's still surprising, all the things that you want from good fiction, it does. I consumed it on audiobook, and I thought it was great. I'm definitely going to pick it up when it comes out. Anyway, that's me. If you want to talk about any of these books or ask questions about them in the comments, feel free. Otherwise, I'll see you next video. Bye.